Welcome to the Raptor Queens Podcast, the first woman-led Toronto Raptors podcast. I'm your host for today, Essie Magic, joined by Allison Hope and Jade Auxiliary Things Johnson. Ladies, how are you feeling today after the first official Raptors game in the restart?
So excited. I'm so happy basketball is back. I was starting to get some serious withdrawal there.
Excited here too. I didn't think this day was going to come. So there was like a high level of excitement all day yesterday.
Yay, we are all so excited. I'm so excited. I couldn't believe that it was even on TV, and it actually felt normal. It didn't feel like there was no fans at all. Like, it just felt so good to have them back that it was just like, it didn't even matter that there were any fans. But wow, so we're so excited to get into our discussions today. Yesterday was the first official regular season game, with the Raptors being the Lakers 107-92, led by Kyle Lowry, who finished with 33 points, a whopping 14 rebounds and 6 assists, followed by OG Anunoby, who had 23 points and was almost perfect from the field, going 8 for 9. So we're going to get into our analysis and observations from the game a bit later, but also want to give you a teaser of what else is coming in this episode. We got Tea Time. Our Raptors rookie has started his own YouTube blog, so we will be touching on some of that. There's, of course, a follow-up to last week, the Lou Williams reaction after our whole investigation, I guess you could call it, last week. And of course, we have the return of the King of the North and Court Jester. I know some of you guys at home love this segment, so we're happy to bring it back now that we have some games. And we have Around the League, reveal our biggest surprises from the other games that happened around the league. And then, of course, like we used to do, we'll finish off with our predictions for next week. Before we get into all that, though, I do have some special announcements about the Raptor Queens that I wanted to bring to your attention. We now have a post-game show live streaming on Twitter where we give our immediate reaction to the game, and you guys can submit questions. So just head over to the Raptor Queens Twitter at Raptor Queens after the games to join us for our immediate reactions and just celebrate whether it's a win or a loss. We'll see. Either way, it's a fun time after each game. And last week, I teased the word ball, and I'm happy to reveal exactly what it's for. We're so excited to host a celebration party called the Raptor Queens Ball on YouTube. It will be a live stream where you can join us, interact with us. The first one will be to celebrate the end of the 8 seeding games, and then we'll be having another one every time the Raptors win a playoff round. It's meant to be more loose and fun, and just an opportunity to virtually party after the wins, talk Raptors, especially at a time when people are practicing social distance. It's a great time to just grab a drink or a snack and hang out with the Raptor Queens. So we are so excited about all these new things we're doing for both the games and the playoffs, and we hope that you will join us. So now on to the first topic, which is our observations and analysis from the first game yesterday, Raptors versus Lakers. Jade, let's start with you. What'd you think?
It was one of those not so pretty, glad we came away with the win kind of games for me. After the initial excitement of last night and it being the first game back, it being a win, and I don't think there's a more satisfying team in the league to beat than the Lakers. Having kind of had a few hours to sleep on it and think about it in prepping for the show today, I came to the realization that we're pretty lucky we got out of that game with a win. We benefited a lot from AD and LeBron not having great games. The fact that the Lakers aren't super deep, which we know, and our level of depth on our bench should have made it an easier game than I think it was. Knowing it's the last game back, I'm not super concerned about that kind of going forward. But I think we're lucky we were able to rely on Kyle and OG last night.
Allison, what do you think?
So I haven't had a chance to rewatch the game, but there were a lot of positive takeaways for me. And I don't know if we were lucky to come away with that win. I think we deserved that win. I will point out, though, that the Lakers are missing a bit of playmaking with Rajon Rondo out. And if I remember seriously correctly, he has a broken thumb. So it sounds like he'll be back for the playoffs. That was my understanding. Just to start the game off last night, kind of one of the first plays of the game that caught my eye, there was Kyle patrolling the paint and looking for offensive rebounds and ended up getting a tap out. And like in hindsight, I took note of that. And I think it was pretty clear that Kyle was setting the tone early on. And really, he has no business getting rebounds against the Lakers front court. And I know it's been said that rebounding is a hustle stat. I mean, here's a 6-foot guy with 14 rebounds. He just wants it more than anyone else. And he's just absolutely playing at the top of his game right now. Fred's on-ball defense was stellar. He was reaching in, he was disrupting, he was forcing the ball handler out of the role as the initiator of the plays. He was a plus 26, and that was not by accident. And he had some very impressive help defense on AD in the paint. I can't really say enough about OG. We probably should have known this was coming. In the first quarter, he put the ball on the floor and drove in for a layup, and that's a really encouraging thing to see. That's been a gap in his game previously, and maybe this is encouraging that he's willing to create more for himself. I mean, he's immensely strong. He's able to take contact, and I think he's a little bit Kawhi-esque in that way, not to belabor the point. And that reminds me of a couple things Jade said before about, especially about OG maybe being the Raptors' X factor in the playoffs if they're going to go deep. And he's got like just increasing confidence with his 3-point shot, which is great to see. Just his defense on LeBron, that was something that college coaches are going to be showing in films for the next few years. That was just a master class. His footwork, his lateral movement, that was just a thing of beauty. So it looks like everything's just lining up for OG right now. He knows when to switch, he knows when to help, he's got active hands. And if this guy is not all defense, all NBA defense on some level, it's just a travesty. There was one sequence in the third quarter, LeBron had the ball at the elbow, and the lane was more or less open for him. It was just OG between the rim and the greatest player of a generation, and LeBron made the pass. There were points in the first quarter that he was showing visible irritation with OG's defense. So that was kind of a cool thing. Norm had a beautiful defensive stand against LeBron too, and he forced a miss, like just really good coverage. And I've been critical of his defense before, but he was pretty solid last night. And then, I mean, as far as Norm's offense, I'm kind of solidly in the middle of the Norm camp and the not anti-Norm camp, but I think we're of two minds on this podcast about Norm. Like, has he, crossed the river and he's like an accomplished player, or is he still mistake prone? So I think the truth is somewhere between what we saw last night and the Eastern Conference Player of the Week, where he left off. It's been a really difficult year, I mean, for everybody, but with his injury. So I have to cut him a little bit of slack. He's been fighting through injuries, and I think he's going to get it together. So there was something different in the second quarter that the Lakers were doing, and I'm going to have to go back and watch that to see what was effective, because I think they actually won that quarter by either 2 or 3 points. So all in all, I saw a lot to be encouraged about. It was really disheartening to see Rondé Hollis-Jefferson go down with what looked like a more serious ankle injury. I sure hope he's okay. And, I just wish nothing but good health, because we're going to need that for a deep run.
Yeah, great analysis, Allison. You covered so much, so I won't get into too many details about what I have. But I will say that it was such an interesting game, because it was not that we went from highs to lows, but for example, we started out 13-0 run to begin the game, and I was like, whoa, so excited. But then in the first half, their bench outscored us 31-6, and I was like, uh-oh, you know what I mean? So, but still definitely a lot of really good highlights. I loved when Kyle Kuzma was trying to post up Fred, thinking that, oh, he's a smaller guy, so this should be easy. And then Fred was able to steal the ball. And it's funny because I think people forget that Fred is one of the league leaders in steals. So they think just because he's small, oh, I can just power him. Meanwhile, you got to be careful with him. So that was really cool. We also kept Anthony Davis scoreless in the first quarter. Things like I mentioned with the bench, things turned around in the second quarter. Unfortunately, we had a couple careless turnovers. I will say I am really impressed with Dion Waiters. I think he was a really good pickup for the Lakers. And he can score, he can play make, he's quick. So I was really pleased with that on the other end. But yeah, other than that, there was some back and forth. At one point, despite the Lakers' slow start, they were actually leading us 43% to 37% field goal percentage after our hot start. So that was where I was a little worried. But of course, Kyle Lowry, super clutch. He's just so strong when he drives. He's a leader, and he definitely, carried us at certain points of the game. So I was really happy with what he did. I had similar feelings about Norm as you, Allison. I think that unfortunately, there were moments where he looked like the old Norm instead of, we always say the new Norm, but he definitely had those moments where, he would drive into traffic with nowhere to go, can't finish his layups. It was unfortunately looking a little reminiscent of the old Norm. And I remember last week we briefly talked about him and we're like, he kind of looked like the old Norm, but we didn't want to really conclude that because it was all just scrimmage games. Not that I'm completely concluding that either, because it's still just the first game, but it was just interesting to see that, considering we were sort of feeling that way last week. But other than that, really good game. I definitely want to see our bench play better. At the end of the game, I believe the Lakers bench outscored us 50-15. So that is a huge deficit. So we definitely don't want to do that. But I am happy with the job we did on Anthony Davis and our dearest Danny Green couldn't score at all. He's been held scoreless both games now against the Lakers. I believe he's like 0 for 10 from 3 and 0 for 12 from the field in the games we've played against him. So, poor Danny Green. And unfortunately, his shirt has been made a meme, I know, because he chose how many more as his saying, and now Laker fans have taken that and made it like, how many more threes is he gonna miss, and been using a picture of his shirt. So poor guy. But overall, very happy about this game, and I can't wait to see what's next.
Etsy, I've got to say, I thought Dion Waiters was terrible. I think he did stick a 3, if memory serves me correctly. And I've got to say, he has a striking resemblance to Glenn Big Baby Davis. It really hit me last night when I looked at him. So, for what it's worth.
Oh, really? I thought he's been doing well since he came back. I feel like, or maybe just because my expectations were so low of him that I don't know. Because the last I heard about him, he had the controversy in Miami where they didn't even want him anymore because of his attitude. But then he did play good. I thought he played good in the first Clippers game, though. I thought he was definitely a light for them on the bench, and I thought he was okay yesterday. So
I agree with that on Waiters. I watched the Lakers Clippers game too. And I think it's kind of one of those things that it's easy to forget when a player leaves a team with controversy that doesn't actually have to do with his play. Dion Waiters has always been a serviceable basketball player. And it was his kind of mental state. So I actually made the joke that it seems like the Lakers' strategy right now is to take all of the talented knuckleheads in the league and see if LeBron can rein them all in. And it seems to be working so far.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's working. He did have the highest plus minus yesterday. Oh, no, sorry. It was Markieff Morris who did. His second highest plus minus on the Lakers yesterday. And I am, speaking of like these troubled players, I am excited that J.R. Smith has gotten his second shot, to redeem himself. He didn't really do much yesterday, but I look forward to seeing what else he can do. On the topic of the game, though, I want to get your guys' thoughts on Marc Gasol. What did you guys think of his gameplay, and what he did for us in his first game starting. I think this is the first game he started since, because the scrimmage games, I believe he came off the bench. Oh no, he started one with Serge, and then today was the first time he started without Serge. So what did you guys think of Marc Gasol's play?
I thought his defense was good. He was absolutely vertical in the paint. He defended very well. From his long range shooting was not good. I have to say, he put the ball on the floor in the second half. So I think he had a stronger second half. But I think we need to expect more from him going forward.
Jade, what about you?
I agree with that. You can always count on him for defense. It doesn't matter how poor an offensive showing he has. Marc is going to bring the defense, which means Marc's going to get minutes. In terms of his offense, I think he's just, the man's 35 years old. It's going to take a minute, I think, for him to get consistent. I feel like the older a player gets, the harder it is to get moving again, kind of like a train. When you're younger, you can kind of just hit the ground running no matter how long a hiatus there's been. Once you start to get older, it's a build up to getting back to where you were. So it was a forgettable performance for me. In rethinking the game, nothing about his game jumped out at me, but I'm not concerned about it either.
Yeah. Essie, what do you think?
Yeah, good take. I think that I think I'm feeling the same way as Jade, but however, I am a little bit more, I don't know how to, not disappointed, but because of the fact that everyone has built up Marc Gasol so much from the weight loss, it's it created a higher expectation from me naturally, just because everyone's oh my gosh, he's lost so much weight. This is going to be so good. He's going to be ready. He's this. And it's just he just seemed to me, you know what I mean? He seemed the same as before, to be honest, which is, struggling on offense, but good on defense, which is fine. It's just, the expectations that were put on him because of his weight loss, and I didn't, of course, because me, I like to wait before jumping on bandwagons, as we speaking of Norm, but yeah, I don't know. I kind of am a little disappointed. I think I was expecting a bit more. It is just one game, but I don't know. Is that what your expectation is of him, or is it just me?
Well, for me, as somebody whose professional life always has a broader view of the NBA, I have to think about the matchup too, in terms of Marc's offense. The Lakers are giants in their starting lineup. There's probably not another team in the league that would be able to limit Marc as much as they were able to offensively, even in terms of just making that right pass and getting in the paint. You got LeBron James out there, Dwight Howard, AD. It's a huge lineup. So I think if our first game had been against a smaller team, maybe the Clippers, Boston, Philly, any of just a team that isn't quite so big across their starting five, I think we would have been more impressed with his offense. I think definitely the matchup played into it too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think the matchup was key. And also on that note, I think in terms of these types of games, I'm more satisfied if we just play really good defense. And we held the Lakers to a season low 35% from the field. So I am overall, I'm happy. It's just, yeah, I think I raised the bar a bit for Marc there. Allison, do you have anything to add to that?
I think we just have to have the perspective that this is a marathon, not a sprint. And in the whole scheme of things, it's going to matter when the playoffs start. I called this as a loss last night. That's what I thought when we did our predictions. But I really don't think it mattered if we won or not. But we have to have a long view here.
Good point. Yeah, I think for me, as long as we seed well here, I think we'll be okay. But of course, I always get worried about, oh my gosh, is this a sign of things to come or whichever? But anyway, I think that's all I have to say about the game. Are there any other points or highlights that you guys wanted to mention?
I'm glad they were able to keep it together because I was concerned through the second and third quarters because I watched the Lakers Clippers game, which was close right up until the fourth quarter when LeBron James said, "Enough is enough. We're not losing this game." And he does that. I'm not a big LeBron James fan, but I will never bet against that intangible ability to just decide this is how things are going to go and actually be able to back it up. So I'm glad. That's why I kind of felt like we could have lost that game if James had been able to get in that space, and definitely OG's defense played into that. But we have to have better from the bench.
Yeah, and that's a good point. For those of you at home who don't know, we have like a group chat where we're talking throughout the games, and Jade was the first one to mention that there was a point at the end of the third or middle of the third where we had grown a 10-point separation, and you're like, oh, I'm so relieved with this 10-point separation because LeBron could turn it on any moment. And then of course it just closed again. It became 72-70. And so yeah, that feeling was like, uh-oh, it's close going into the fourth. Is LeBron just going to take over? And or AD also had been struggling all game. Is he finally going to decide to take it up a notch? And next thing you know, we're down by 10 in the fourth. So yeah, that was definitely a justified worry, I would say. Okay, I think that's it for our Raptors roundup section. We are going to get into some tea time right now. There's a lot of fun things happening. Specifically, Oshae Brissett has started his own vlog, YouTube vlog, which is always great because I know I've mentioned it before, but I've been living for all this bubble content. Specifically, I've been watching JaVale McGee and I've been watching Matisse Thybulle. So to have Oshae Brissett pick it up and be able to show us what the Raptors have been doing. Some really interesting things we saw. There was this one scene of Oshae and DeJuan heading to lunch, and he shows Fred VanVleet intentionally walking separately from them because they're rookies. I thought that was so funny. It's something that we would otherwise not be able to see. We got to see a bit of how, where they eat. Up until this point, I'd only seen the Lakers room where they eat. But we got to see that the Raptors were eating in a whole different section. So that was interesting as well. And then there's been a couple other things that he showed. He interacted with Matt Thomas. Matt Thomas has picked up the Toronto lingo, I guess you could say, and had a whole conversation speaking the Toronto slang. So that was really fun as well. So I'm happy that he's been posting.
I'm definitely going to have to check out Matt Thomas doing the Toronto slang because Matt Thomas is such a white boy and the Toronto slang is very brown and black kind of together. So I feel like that's going to be super entertaining, and I have to see how well he pulls that off.
He definitely pulled it off. I was shocked. I was like, he might as well just move to Toronto permanently now. We did want to do a follow-up with the Lou Williams saga from last week, because ironically, just as we were speculating on the podcast, Sonali had brought up Jack Harlow posting that picture. Literally within hours later, maybe 2 hours later, the NBA announced, or the news dropped, that the NBA was investigating. So when we did the podcast, we were just going off speculation at the time, and then it was confirmed to be true. So that was very interesting. And then to add to that, now one of the performers has come out and confirmed that she did indeed perform for him, and it wasn't just about getting wings like he made it seem. So I thought it would be interesting to just bring that up again, because it was something we talked about a lot last week, and some of us were saying he was selfish. And Allison, I'm most keen to hear what you thought, because you were the one defending him last week and we didn't know for sure. And now all this extra information has come out. So what do you think about that, Allison?
So he was somewhat controversial when he was in Toronto, right, with the two girlfriends and all that. and Drake writing the song about it. And I think it's no surprise that Masai didn't even offer him like a phone call at the end of the season when he was a free agent. Yeah, this was like spectacularly bad judgment. I wasn't so much defending him as being cooped up. Like, I can't imagine having like a brand new Audi R8 sitting in my garage 500 kilometers away and not being able to drive it. That would make me crazy, but I don't. So, but there was a hilarious tweet last night when someone posted about the performer saying that she had done some contract work for Lou, shall we say, and someone responded that, yeah, someone from the Lakers probably paid her off to say that. So I found that quite funny.
Yeah, no, that definitely, I could see someone doing that. I think one thing this bubble is making me realize is just how far some of the players are willing to go to, like, you know, sabotage the other teams, whether it be the snitch hotline, whether it be Giannis lying about his practicing. Like, I think that's so funny, but I love it though. Yeah, other than that, that's pretty much all I have for tea time. Is there any tea or that you guys have that is piping hot? Or
I was just gonna make a comment on Lou Williams too. I'm annoyed that he won't just own it. Like, he's still trying to go with this narrative of, oh, I was in and out. Like, okay, Lou, in and out to pick up takeout means you go through the door, you stand at the counter, you exchange money, you take your food, and you walk out the door. In and out means there's no opportunity for you to be photographed sitting down beside your buddy. And the fact that it's his favorite place that has a dish named after him, like, we know you weren't in and out, Lou. Can you be a man and own that you messed up, and just, yeah, and even just for the sake of your teammates, like, own it so that your team, your locker room can move past it. You're now missing 2 games. They needed him in that game against the Clippers. And the only other thing I'll say is that during that game with the Clippers, Kenny Smith made my night at halftime when he did his thing where he goes into the game and came back out with his box of wings throwing shade at Lou Williams. That I laughed so hard. I'm so glad that I got that game, because that made the whole game for me.
that was very funny. Yeah, that was so. I was already impressed that Kenny Smith, like, they did the whole walking into the game thing when he went behind the screen and made like superimposed him in the footage. So that in itself was impressive. Then he comes out with this plate cover and he's like, oh, just picking up some wings from, I don't remember exactly how he said it, but it was really funny. Yeah, that was really good. Yeah, and I guess I'll just say, I mean, you guys know my opinion. If you listened last week, you know my thoughts on it already, what I said last week, which is that I just thought it was super selfish of him. And you know, it's also just, we don't want it to set a bad precedent where next thing you know, players are they're claiming they have an emergency, you know, just so that they can leave the bubble and go have fun or whichever. And also to his teammates, I'm sure a lot of them would love to have wings and love to go out and do stuff, but they're all sacrificing in their room. So it just seems very selfish. And, you know, glad that hopefully he's learning his lesson. And I'm glad that the NBA made it a 10-day quarantine instead of the 4-day. So yeah, so the King of the North segment. So let's get into that. For those of you at home who don't remember, because we paused this segment once the games were suspended, but it is essentially where we each pick our top player of the week, our top Raptor player of the week, and then we pick our court jester, who is somebody who we thought had poor performance or maybe amused us in some other funny way. So let's start with Jade, this is Jade's first King of the North, by the way. So I'm excited to hear what she has to say. Go for it.
I'm excited about it too. So I have to give it to OG for his performance against LeBron last night. Not only is that probably the hardest coverage in that game, but he played offensively out of his mind. This season, OG is averaging 10.9 points a game. So he more than doubled his usual offensive production while still spending the extra energy it takes to stop LeBron James. And most people who know basketball or who have played basketball know that defense is takes a lot more energy than offense does. So I'm just so impressed with him. He's my favorite Raptors player already, partially because he reminds me a lot of my younger brother, which you probably guys don't know yet. But my younger brother has a very similar, seems super quiet, but then he's like the funniest person on earth kind of personality going on. So I already have a soft spot for OG, the fact that he's defensive, and I can't say enough about his play on LeBron last night.
Allison, what about you? Who's your King of the North?
I went with a non-player Raptor. I went with Masai Ujiri. And there's going to be a lot of time to talk about players. But I've been thinking, for me, he has put the Raptors in this position. We're in the upper echelons of the league, and we're probably a contender as a free agent destination now because of him. For his leadership, I mean, he's established the Raptors as probably the premier team in the league on matters of integrity and promoting women into key roles, and his outreach. I mean, here at home with the First Nations, with the teens from La Loche, Saskatchewan, and also on an international stage with the Giants of Africa. I mean, we wouldn't be here, the Raptor Queens. We wouldn't be here on this podcast. We wouldn't have a championship here in Canada, and just show what living your values means. And this is all because of Masai Ujiri. So we're basically living in the house that Masai's built. This is the house on the hill. And we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him.
Wow, that's a really good take, Allison, and even Jade as well. Like you guys both picked what I didn't think you would pick, but I'm happy to see the variety of our kings. We have some kings battling over territory now. It sounds. I went with Kyle Lowry because to me he just was the obvious choice, and I just felt like I couldn't deny how and those are some great points made about OG. Like him containing LeBron was so crucial, and to still have offensive production in addition to that was amazing. But for me, I just thought Kyle Lowry was just like so clutch, and he was such a closer for us. Obviously we know about the 33 points and 14 rebounds, but it's just in that fourth quarter, the way he can just turn things around when things are starting to get a bit close or the other team might be getting some momentum. Like I feel like he really changed the game up, and obviously in combination with OG, who made some clutch threes as well. But I went with Kyle Lowry just because he just seemed like a superstar to me last night. So that was my King of the North.
He would have been my second choice for sure. That was just an outstanding game.
Same. Yeah. And him passing Iverson for all-time assists is pretty special. Have him being a Philly guy, that's kind of a cool thing for him. And the company he's keeping on that list is all-time elite.
Yeah, and I think the 14 rebounds was a career high. I'm not 100% sure, but it was. Yeah, so even that is like he literally had one of the best games. Yes.
Against that giant Lakers lineup again. Like, that's insane.
So there was an interesting tweet this morning by a gentleman from somewhere in the States who claims to be a sports writer. He's at George Wrightster, and this is what he said. Has anyone in the history of the world ever said the words, Kyle Lowry is my favorite NBA player?
I saw that.
Whoa. Yeah. He took some major heat on from NBA, from Raptors Twitter. I think he was very nicely ratioed.
Yeah, he's something else, man. I think that he just like his whole, what he said was besides the point. You know what I mean? Whether that's just because Kyle Lowry doesn't get the recognition he deserves. You know what I mean? If the media spoke about Kyle Lowry more, then fans would jump on not to say fans are bandwagon-ish, but a lot of times the media does influence. Let's be realistic, right?
Well, and it has to, because the casual fan doesn't have time to watch the league, right? Like a casual fan watches their team maybe once or twice a week. A serious fan watches all of their team's games. a serious NBA fan catches as many games as they can. So they have to depend on the media a lot for their takes just because they have lives. They've got stuff they got to do. They can't spend the time on basketball. And that's why it makes me so mad when media personalities do this, because it's your job it's literally what you get paid for, is to inform people that don't do your job, that don't spend their lives on basketball. So get it together, please and thank you.
I guess we see what Jade has been holding in for some time there with that little rant. But yeah, that's a good point to make. I do want to say one other thing about Kyle Lowry, because you mentioned something, Jade, about being amongst the tallest players, like on the Lakers. He was playing against some of the tallest players in the league, or biggest players. And I do want to add to that, because I think this game also really showed the difference between why Kyle Lowry is so great and why Fred VanVleet is not there yet. Because I don't know if you guys noticed, but I feel like Fred has the same fearlessness as Kyle. He's a very tough guy. He's not afraid to drive, but instead he tends to get blocked a lot or can't finish at the rim. Sometimes he deserves a call, but a lot of times he just gets blocked. Whereas Kyle can actually get in there and like finish or get a foul. You know what I mean? And that's what makes him also very special, and why it's like, of course, Fred still had a decent game. He had a double-double, but when I saw that, I was just like, this is literally the difference between, Kyle and Fred. And I hope Fred can get there someday, but I just felt like this really illustrated that, reason that Kyle is so good,
I definitely agree with that. And I will say that I think Fred will, just by virtue of the fact that he does have Kyle to mentor him. I already noticed earlier in the season that he's learned stuff from Kyle's game for sure. Like his ability to use his body to make space between the ball and the defender to get layups. He never used to be able to do that. And it's very, like, I see it happen, and you could put Kyle in there and the silhouette is almost identical. So he's definitely learning from Kyle's game. And I think if we keep Kyle around for another couple of seasons, Fred's smart enough. He knows that Kyle's the perfect guy for him to learn from.
Right. Okay, so let's get into our Court Jester segment. I almost forgot we had the Court Jester segment for a second there. So let's get into our Court Jester segment. Who did you guys think performed poorly, or who amused you in a funny or awkward way? Let's go with Allison first.
So I'll be very succinct here. I picked OG just for that $1 million smile that he flashed last night after one of his power moves to the rim. He's normally just so taciturn and so poker faced. It was just, I don't know if you guys saw it. It was just like the cutest $1 million smile. It made my night.
Okay. That wasn't what I was expecting you to say, but okay. Let's go to Jade.
So I'm going with a poor performance, and it's going to be a group award for the Raptors bench last night. Our bench is critical to our success, and they're going to have to do better.
Yeah, there's no denying that. That's like 100%. Like, that was just awful yesterday. So that is a good choice, Jade. For my Court Jester, I had to go with Norman Powell, 3 for 12 from the field, minus 22. It was just, he just looked so much like the old Norm, and it was disappointing because I want him to do well. I actually really do like Norman Powell. I know some people think that I don't like him because I criticize him, but I love Norman Powell. I think he's amazing. I think he's exciting. I love when he dunks, but I have to be honest when he doesn't play well. And I'm also slow to jump on the train because he's been inconsistent. So I'm just not on the train, but I still love Norman Powell. But yeah, 3 for 12. I'm sorry. That was looking like the old Norm. And I hope he can bounce back. He did have that one exception, though, where he made this miraculous hook shot that I thought he was going to lose the ball for sure. I was watching from the Lakers broadcast because I got blacked out from seeing it on ESPN. But even the Lakers commentators were like, whoa, I'm surprised he missed that. He looked like he was about to lose the ball there. So it was still very Norm-ish, that one play. But Yeah, so I went with Norman Powell. I don't know if you guys agree.
He left a lot of shots on the rim last night that he normally makes. Um, but I thought he played well on defense, but I can totally see why you picked him, Messi.
Yeah, I'm in Essie's camp when it comes to Norm too. I love Norman Powell, I do, but he's not consistent. And I was concerned about this restart because historically it takes him time to get going again. We talked a little earlier about it being the older guys that need that, but Norm kind of falls in that category too, where he just does not get things going quickly. And for me to be as excited about him as some other Raptors fans are and the other 2/5 of the Raptors Queens are, I need that consistency.
Oh gosh, yeah. I wish they were here to like, because they wouldn't like what we were saying, but oh well, that's what we think. So yeah, the consistency is key for sure. And it's weird because he did have a moment last season where it felt like he switched, and I said last season, sorry, you guys know what I mean. It just feels like a different season. But yeah. Where it seemed like he switched, it seemed like his basketball IQ went up. I heard he was watching a lot of film and really improving in terms of his basketball IQ. So it's weird how I don't know, it just felt like, I don't know. We won't get into it much more because it was only one game after all, but it's one of those watch this space type of things.
Exactly.
Okay, so now into our Around the League segment. We did want to touch on some of the surprises that we saw around the league because there were a ton of games happening in one day. It was like heaven for NBA fans. So let's get into some of the surprises we saw in other games. Let's start with Jade.
So my biggest surprise was not so much a specific game, but kind of there's been a big discrepancy in how close games have been. So like opening night, Jazz, Pelicans, Clippers, Lakers were close games. And then Friday, there were blowouts or games that had very large leads with kind of unexpected teams. I was expecting things to be a little bit more, I don't know if rusty is the right word, but like the scores of the games on Friday was insane. Like 135, 140 Grizzlies, Trailblazers, 153, 149 Rockets, Mavericks. Mind you, yes, both of those games went to overtime, but still, like, no defense was played in those games, either of those games. And especially with it being the Mavs and the Grizzlies and Trailblazers, like the Rockets are confident, I think, and don't care so much about their seeding. And the Mavericks are pretty solid. But for the Grizzlies and Trailblazers, the lack of defensive intensity surprised me because both of those teams are in peril of not making the playoffs, possibly depending on how these seeding games go and whether there is a play-in tournament for that 8th spot. So that was probably my biggest surprise. The crazy scores in Friday's games. No game had any team under 100 points on Friday, and just no defense played in that Grizzlies Trailblazers game.
Great observation, Jade. Yeah, definitely the scores were very big and there was a lot of discrepancy there. Allison, what were your surprises?
I was somewhat surprised that Houston beat Dallas, but I wasn't able to watch the game. But I did watch the Indiana-Philly game yesterday, which ended up being 127-121. And that was pretty revealing. Philadelphia looked disorganized and quite frankly dysfunctional. And at one point, it looked like there was a verbal altercation on the bench, and I couldn't really see who it was. So I was saying, I think Brett Brown's in trouble. I think that team's in trouble. So that was kind of my, surprise for me. I thought that game would be closer, and I thought Philly, because I think Oladipo played limited minutes, and they didn't have Sabonis. So I was a little surprised at that outcome.
Yeah, that was actually my choice as well for my big surprise from around the league was the game Philly versus Indiana, specifically the altercation. It was between Joel Embiid and Shake Milton. It was, they were heading towards the bench, and the two of them just started yelling at each other. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, it just, to me, I'm a strong believer in where there's smoke, there's fire. And we've already heard about chemistry issues. And so to see it be, it's like, here's the fire coming out. Now that we're getting to playoffs, tensions are getting high, people are feeling more pressure, and we're seeing it. I mean, we already heard about the rumored chemistry issues with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. So to see that Joel Embiid is also now, I don't want to call it fighting, but getting into altercations with other teammates, it might be bigger than we all thought. It might not just be Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. There could be other team issues. And there's been rumors of some people wanting the coach to be fired. So that was a big revelation for me when I saw that altercation. I will say, though, I did enjoy that one block that Joel Embiid had, which was just not, it was just any block. It was like a turbo ultra super block. I don't know if you saw the clip of that. It was like he just had some superpowers and just knocked it right out of there. So that was a pretty interesting highlight. But yeah, my biggest surprise was the Shake Milton Joel Embiid confrontation. And speaking of Victor Oladipo as well, I also find it so interesting how he decided to play, because at first he was like, no, I'm not going to play. And it kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you guys can relate, but like those times when you're like, you're going out with your friends and you're like, I'm not going to drink this one night. And then you get to the actual bar and you decide to have a drink. And then after you've had one drink, you're like, well, I might as well have more drinks. Like, I feel like that's literally what Victor Oladipo has done. He was like, oh, I'm just going to come to the bubble and just watch. And then he sees everyone playing. He's like, oh, well, maybe I should just play the scrimmage games. Oh, okay, now I'm going to play the real games. So I just find it so funny how he suddenly decided to play.
Yeah, I imagine it would be hard when he's already been off for so long with the injury. It's not his first injury where he's missed a lot of time. And now he probably would have been, I mean, I think he would have been back. It wouldn't have been a question of whether or not he comes back had the season continued regularly. So I can totally see how that scenario that you say could totally make sense. Because you're there, you're with your buddies. The Pacers, by all accounts, are a pretty tight team. And everybody's playing. And not only that, they were talking about the campus in the Raptors game last year. So it's a throwback to when they were in high school and college. That's a place they would have played with all of these guys, just basketball 24/7. So yeah, I think that's a really good characterization of probably what went on in his head.
That's like the number one comparison that came to my mind as soon as I saw that he decided to play. Speaking of that, I do have one other surprise or observation. I do want to commend LeBron, and some people are not going to be surprised that I'm bringing this up, but whatever. LeBron's defense on Kawhi Leonard in that Lakers versus Clippers game. I just want to say I'm so proud of LeBron and how he stepped up his defense just in general, because that's one of the things that people were saying before the beginning of the season when Kawhi decided to sign with the Clippers and everything became about Lakers versus Clippers and who's the better player, who's the, you know what I mean? So that was the one thing people kept saying was like, oh, LeBron's defense doesn't compare to Kawhi's defense and all that. So obviously he's still not at the same level as Kawhi, but I'm just happy to see him stepping up to the table in terms of his defense. He still does have, moments where there's a breakage, I'll admit, but it's nice to see those moments where he's really stepping up to the plate. Even Kyle Kuzma as well, although he was struggling with Kyle Lowry yesterday, he has had better moments this season in terms of defense. So you can see he's actually really trying. So I just wanted to commend the extra defensive efforts I've seen there.
I mean, I have something to say. I have a hard time commending LeBron on his defensive effort because defensive effort is a choice that he just doesn't make most of the time. So it's hard for me when it's possible for him to do it 100% of the time and he's just like, nah. And just like LeBron really picks his moments, and it's intelligent. It's an intelligent way to play basketball. It's why he's still at the level he is this many years in. but I don't respect it as much as the players that play hard defense every possession.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's fair.
I still haven't forgiven LeBron for spinning the ball in his hands before a corner three in the 2017 Eastern Conference Finals, and fake drinking a fan's beer. Still not forgiven.
Okay, it sounds like that's forever, Allison.
Yes, it is. Although I completely respect him as a player and as you know, a stand-up citizen. But yeah, I'll never forgive that.
Okay, I guess that describes it all. All right, so I think that's it for our Around the League segment. And lastly, we want to get into our predictions for the week. We have 4 games upcoming: Heat, Magic, Celtics, and Grizzlies. So ladies, what do you think? Allison, who do you think is going to win each of those games?
So true to form, I'm going to call it an L against Miami. I did watch them dismantle Denver yesterday. We're going to beat Orlando, we're going to beat Boston, and we're going to beat the Grizz.
Okay, so that's 3-1.
Yep.
All right, Jade, what about you?
Okay, so for me, the Heat game depends on if Jimmy Butler is there or not. Right now, we don't know if he's going to be available to play tomorrow, and it's an afternoon game. Based on what I was looking at online just before we started, they don't know when he's going to be back. If Jimmy misses that game, it's a W, and we're going to go 4-4 for the week.
All right, so I am going to count that as, so we don't allow sitting on the fence on the Raptors. So you could either choose that as 3-1 or 4-0. Are you going to gamble?
You know, this is why they do fantasy sports daily, right? Because this stuff matters. Okay, I'm going to channel Sarah then. I'm going to channel Sarah, and I'm going to say we're going to go 4-4.
Oh, 4-0.
4-0, yes.
All right, representing for Sarah the Queen and Jade, we sometimes call her Heartless, but that was very heartful. I don't think that's a word, but you guys get what I mean. So I am going to say 3-1. I'm in Allison's vein. I think that we will beat Memphis. Obviously, I think we'll beat the Magic. I think that we'll beat the Celtics as well, just because they haven't been playing that good so far. The Heat, I think that we will lose to the Heat. I think that Jimmy Butler will try to play. If he doesn't play, it's a very serious reason. So I'm just going to go 3-1. Who knows? It could be 3-1, a loss of the other games, but I just can't see them going 4-0 either. Like, it just seems like one of the games are going to be tired, or they're going to be not as focused or something. So I'm going to go with 3-1, and we'll see what happens. We'll definitely rub it in each other's faces next week when we have the results. So with that being said, that is the end of this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, I want to remind you about our new post-game show live stream happening on Twitter, as well as the Raptor Queens Ball that is coming after this 8-seed round, as well as any playoff wins. So follow us on Twitter at Raptor Queens, follow us on Instagram at Raptor Queens, and of course on YouTube, subscribe. And if you want to listen to the podcast on other platforms, we're on Google, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, the list goes on. So thank you guys once again for listening, and we will see you next time. Bye.
We the North.